Welcome to Talking with the Experts. This is where we discuss great ideas to take your business to the next level. How do we know these ideas work? Well, it's because we're talking with business owners who are using these ideas. Business owners who have years of experience and expertise. All things business by business owners for business owners. And now, here is your host, Rose Davidson.
Hi, I'm Rose Davidson from Talking with the Experts. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Global Glamping Charities for their valued support. Global Glamping Charities, solving homelessness in all its forms. Reach out to them at globalglamping.org. Do you love your podcast and dislike the editing and uploading to the various platforms? Would you like to spend this time with your family and friends or work on your business? Podcast editing doesn't have to be a chore. Talking with the Experts partners with podcasters who need help with audio and content editing. If you'd like to know more, contact me, Rose Davidson, using the link showing now or send me a private message.
Talking with the Experts.
Once you create harmony in your marriage, you can start to thrive as an entrepreneur. In episode 442, Erin Woodruff tells us why and how.
And that is a part of it, because some people do just want to relax and they don't want to participate. But most people, I do think, want to have their voice heard at some point. And so if you can give people an opportunity at any point to share, that will allow you to be seen as a leader who truly values people and values opinions. And when they do have an opinion and they share it with you, you know they're being serious. And that is the true power of that right there, is being able to open that communication door and saying, I'm here, I'm listening. What do you want to share? And then being really attentive to the things that they say.
Talking with the Experts.
Hello, welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. You can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. Today, my next guest is Erin Woodruff. And Erin is going to be talking about how we can all stay married to our co-workers if you're an introvert. Now, as a mum and a CEO, Erin has realised that much of the drama that she had when it came to being an entrepreneur had to do with her personal relationships. But once she created a harmony in her marriage, she started to thrive as an entrepreneur. So she's going to share with us how understanding the differences between introversion and extroversion, and then creating communication that can flow well between people, allowed her to truly give her all to her business endeavours. Welcome, Erin, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Rose, for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm glad that you came. It's wonderful. I love meeting all these new people. It's just, I don't know, makes my day, because then I can get to be happy for most of the day.
Right. I completely understand.
What is the difference? I mean, we all know the difference between an introvert and an extrovert. But an introvert can be extroverted and an extrovert can be introverted. So how can, in a relationship, we'll first start with a marriage, like as in a couple, how can those two things or two behaviours, two ways of being, be brought to a harmonious conclusion?
That's a really great question. And you're exactly right. It's not like you're an introvert or you're an extrovert. There's a continuous spectrum and all the things in between. And most people have that flow between the two. And so I think the biggest thing is just becoming aware of your most natural tendencies and where you fall. When I first got married, and this is why I coach on this now, because this was me, when I first got married, my husband was so introverted that I became way more introverted, and it was really damaging to my own mental health because I wasn't fulfilling those external needs that I needed for my social stimulus. And so I think the biggest thing is just to become self-aware of where you do fall on that spectrum and how that can affect your relationships if you're not taking care of your own needs. Because if you're an introvert and don't get enough alone time, then your relationship might be fractured because of that. And if you're an extrovert but don't get enough social time, then the same thing can happen. And so being able to acknowledge where you're at and then being true and communicating that with your partner, whether it's a coworker or a spouse, it is really important to honor each other and to honor yourself, because then if you're honoring your needs, then you can show up in a much different way.
I totally get that. My husband is, well, I'm a mix of, socially I'm an extrovert, but at home I'm a total introvert. I love being alone, but going out, you can't shut me up. I used to be quite the party girl once upon a time, but yeah. But my husband, he is more bordering on being an extrovert than an introvert. So he could never understand why I needed all this alone time when I was at home. I just really liked it. I'd go out the garden and spend hours out there, or I'd go and do my craft work and, wouldn't have a conversation with him. And I still don't. I just like to be doing my thing, and it makes me happy. But he's come to understand that.
Yeah, and having that mutual understanding is so important, because that actually is what creates harmony and great balance within your relationship. Because if we take each other's behaviors too personally, especially in the workplace, then it can become points of tension. If someone's not sharing as much as you think they should be, or if someone's talking over everybody and they can't shut up. And being able to understand that it's not necessarily that someone isn't wanting to talk or someone is just talking endlessly. It's not necessarily because they're trying to be rude on either spectrum, but because of where their natural social tendencies lie. Introverts I have found, a much higher tolerance to sit in silence. And extroverts do not. Extroverts do not like quiet. They do not like silence. And so in a workplace, you're going to find this within teams also. That is one reason why extroverts will just voluntarily speak up, because they can't handle the silence. Where the introverts are taking that time to process internally and think before they speak. But extroverts typically they think out loud, and introverts process internally before they speak.
Oh, yes, I used to get in so much trouble at work for speaking out loud. Like, I'd speak to myself, but it was out loud and used to disturb everybody else. And I couldn't see the point why they were complaining.
Right.
Anyway, that's another story. How can we, I guess, marry the two types of people together in the workplace? Because it isn't always easy. The extrovert, as you alluded to, doesn't get on with the introvert because they don't know why they're not making a noise, why they're not talking, why they're not interacting. And conversely, the introvert doesn't like all this intrusion into their space. So how can we, as leaders perhaps, or just as individuals, better balance that?
That's a really good question. And a lot of it will just depend on where you're at in your leadership role. If you're an extrovert who's a leader or an introvert who's a leader, all of the things I will say will be applicable, but just take the pieces and apply them to you accordingly. Because one thing, and I mentioned a few minutes ago about introverts taking more time to internally process. So if you're an extrovert and you're a leader and you want your introvert people or team to speak up, then you actually need to ask for their opinion. They might not voluntarily give it. And so being willing to say, hey, Sally, will you share what you think about this? and give them time to respond, not necessarily put them on the spot, but let them know. Because as a team, and especially if you're trying to create that culture of unity and inclusion, one way to do it is just to say it out loud. Because sometimes I think we try to manipulate in a very nice, pretty way to get people to participate versus just saying, I really want to hear from you. I notice that you don't share much. I think you have really good ideas. Please take some time to think about it. And in the next meeting, I'm going to ask for your opinion. So would you be willing to share? And give them plenty of time to think about it so they're prepared. Where by nature, extroverts usually just think out loud, or they just can hear something and then shoot back an idea. Give those introverts, if you're not getting that feedback that you want from them, give them time to process and then ask for it. And that alone will give a lot of trust there. And it also just builds the bridge because they know that they're truly being valued in the workplace, and you as a leader are valuing their opinion.
Yeah, I think valuing somebody the way they are rather than trying to make them into something they're not is such a great thing, but it doesn't always happen. And people are being forcing introverts to interact, or have their say, or be more involved in decision making, when they just really want to sit back and watch the world go by and go with the status quo.
And that is a part of it, because some people do just want to relax and they don't want to participate, but most people, I do think, want to have their voice heard at some point. And so if you can give people an opportunity at any point to share, that will allow you to be seen as a leader who truly values people and values opinions. And when they do have an opinion and they share it with you, they're being serious. And that is the true power of that right there, is being able to open that communication door and saying, I'm here, I'm listening. What do you want to share? And then being really attentive to the things that they say.
Yeah. And as a life coach, you work mainly with women, I understand. Right. And so how do you help your clients, to better communicate and, find more love and create them time for themselves?
That is a really great question. And that's something I work on a lot with my clients. And one of the things about communicating is never assume that someone else knows what you're thinking. Especially as a mom and a business owner, and I stay home, and I'm a wife, and I stay home with my kids, or my toddler, and I cannot assume that anyone, especially my partner, knows what my experience is. I can't assume that he knows what my needs are, that he knows what I want. And so learning how to practice communicating that, saying, I have just been screamed at by a toddler for the last 4 hours. I'm just exhausted and I just need to be alone for a while. Is there any way that you can just take her, do whatever you want to do? I don't even care, but I'm going to go on a walk for an hour. And being able to communicate it, not in a, I've completely had it, this is the worst, but in a, I don't want to quit my mom as a job, or my job as a mom, excuse me. And so rather than really irrationally making some flippant remark, just saying, what do I actually need right now? And how can I get it? How can I communicate it to someone? And then asking for help. That right there is the biggest gap in communication, is that we assume that people should know how to help us.
Yes, and asking is paramount, really, isn't it?
But sometimes it's hard to ask if we're not aware of what we need. So you have to ask yourself, what do I need right now? And be honest with yourself. Because if you're at work too, and you've been in the business meetings all day and your brain is fried, ask yourself, what do I need right now? Do I need to keep talking about this problem that we're trying to solve? Do I need to take a 10-minute walk? Do I need to just take off 30 minutes early today and come in 30 minutes early tomorrow?
Do I need a stiff whiskey?
Yes. Do I need a stiff whiskey? And you are going to know, rather than just going along with what you think you should be doing, just stopping and asking yourself, because that's when you're able to actually connect with what you need right now. And then that from there, you can ask for help. And that can, in a business setting, that can look like you go to your boss, or maybe you go to a team member or whatever and say, these meetings today, they were really intense. My brain is fried. I'm going to take off 30 minutes today. I hope you're okay with that. But tomorrow, I'm hoping to come back and do this, this, and this. And you've thought it out. You have a plan, and you're not just saying, I've had it and I'm done, and you slam the door and walk out. But you're actually honoring what you need. And that right there is going to allow, again, for that trust to be built within a team, because you're communicating with your boss or your team members, and they can see that you're taking care of what you need. And then it'll really pay off when you show up the next day and you're completely fresh. They might not do the same thing for them, but you can do that for you.
Yeah, it's really important, I think, to take the time to honor yourself before you honor others, because sometimes you know that you've had a really bad day, but then sometimes you go and you take it out on other people when it's not even their fault. It's just that you've had a bad day and you want to vent, and really that's not appropriate. You need to actually stop yourself, do what Mel Robbins suggests, and count back, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It gives you the time to stop and think about what you're feeling and how you can better communicate what you're feeling, rather than holding it all in and smashing someone's head against the wall.
Yeah. And I'll share another example too, on the other side of, maybe it wasn't a terrible day. Maybe it was one of those days you sat at your computer all day, you didn't talk to anybody, and it was a normal average day. And for me as an extrovert, those days are hard, because I get up from my desk and I think I have not had any connection today. So what do I need? And sometimes it's just to call a friend, or I have a bunch of sisters, to call a sister. Sometimes I just need to talk to one person, but sometimes that might be going out shopping, going out to the bar, whatever you need, because it's going to vary based on your day and the things that are happening in your life. It doesn't have to just be the extreme examples, but if you're taking care of your external energy just as much as introverts, I'm encouraging introverts to take care of their internal energy, then you are going to have a better balance there too.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can, and there won't be so much friction in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
Erin, what are some strategies that people could use? And we'll firstly work on as an extrovert. How can an extrovert better understand what an introvert needs?
Ask them.
Other than that.
Well, that is the biggest one. But the biggest thing in general is to ask yourself, what do I need? And how could someone else's needs be different than mine? Trying to really put yourself in those shoes. Or what would it be like to just want to sit in silence? That's something I really struggle with. And ask yourself that question. And introverts don't just sit in silence, and I don't want anyone to think that, but introverts do spend a lot more time with their mouths closed. I've noticed that, whether it's scrolling on their phone, watching TV, relaxing, whatever it is. And so being able to observe introverts around you, to ask them what they need. But a big thing is just to allow for them to be them. Don't expect them and force them into the extroverted ideals of what we think they should be.
So conversely, how can an introvert better understand an extrovert?
I think that's another great question. And another one is just ask them, what do they need? Because the needs of introverts and extroverts will vary. And for introverts to understand extroverts, it's not so much that we always want to be talking or always want to be with people, but it's about what kind of energy are we fueling our souls with? Because if any of us spend too much time with people who are really negative or critical or in a hard workplace environment, it's going to drain any of us. And so even for extroverts, where they want to have that social interaction with people, they're still looking for the positive social interactions to fuel their social meter. And so even if they work in an extroverted job, that doesn't necessarily mean that their extroverted needs are being met. And so for me as an extrovert, I love having different types of people in my life. I love having my immediate family. I love having my extended family, and I love having friends. And all of those pieces are really important to me. And I've found with a lot of introverts, they don't value loose friendships as much. They really love their immediate family and then their like larger immediate family, but they don't really care too much about having friends that they just go grab lunch with. They have their really close circle of friends, but for extroverts, at least for me, I like having lots of friends, anyone that I can just text and say, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to go to lunch? Do you want to have a business meeting? And that is really important for me as an extrovert, but I think that goes for a lot of people. But I do want to put a disclaimer that nothing that I've shared is like across the board for anybody, right? Because there is a spectrum that ebbs and flows. So being able to ask and have questions and to have that dialogue within teams and within relationships is so important.
Yeah, it is. And you know, talking and finding out, asking questions is always the best way. And I mean, if you learn how to read faces, you can usually tell what type of person that you're interacting with anyway, just by the way that they, what way they look, their body language, the things that they do or they don't do in comparison to yourself. So, yeah, so, just things to be mindful of. And yeah, I guess it's not always easy, to have it's not always easy to have two types of people in the workplace, especially if an introvert is doing an extrovert type job. Sometimes they don't feel comfortable and they can't work out why.
And right there, I think I love that you bring that up, because that is a great opportunity for that individual and the team or the company to grow. Because sometimes that person is the best fit for the job, except we think they should be more extroverted. But sometimes introverts have superpowers that extroverts don't have. And one of those skills is just listening, being empathetic, being able to process information before making big decisions. They think through things in different ways. And so if you are that person, if you're an introvert in what seems to be an extroverted role, just lean into the superpowers that you intuitively have, because you are going to move mountains, because you're going to do things in different ways than an extrovert would do. And that's really cool. I think you can really lean into those opportunities and in ways that other people can't.
Yeah, very true. I think introverts are a little bit more perceptive. I don't mean to say that as like it's a blanket comment. It doesn't mean that every introvert's got those things, but as the people that I've found that are introverted usually have better intuition than extroverts, I think, because extroverts are too busy talking and not enough listening.
I would agree. Not always, but I would definitely agree with that.
Erin, I would love to for you to share with us where people can find you if they want to know more about you or indeed work with you.
Thank you. I would love to share. You can find me at my website, erinwoodruffcoaching.com, or on Instagram at Erin Woodruff Coaching. Those are the two easiest places to find me. and just reach out to me. We can chat, but I do have some freebies that you can go and grab right away if you're interested. One is, where do you fall on the introvert extrovert spectrum? And so if you don't know, if you're listening to this conversation and you don't know, you can go take the quiz. It will give you a result page with some ideas of how to make time for yourself, how that might show up in your time management skills or in the workplace. And it will just give you some new ideas. And then the other one is, are you married to an introvert? If you're wondering as you're listening, is my partner an introvert or something like that? Because it gives you some good ideas of how to bridge some gaps in your relationships.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. If you had to, or if you would give advice to somebody or some words of wisdom, what would you share?
Speaking about this specifically, I would share, and I mentioned this earlier, but don't try to change that person. Especially when I work with people in romantic relationships, they are now frustrated with a person that they fell in love with because they think they should be different than they are. But if you can think about all of the wonderful things of why you love them, it's probably because they are being who they were then and they still are. And so if you can love them as they are rather than hoping or wishing that they would change, you are going to be in a much happier relationship because you're embracing who they are. And in turn, you're going to start embracing who you are, and you're going to stop demanding that you are changing as well. And that is what creates, in my opinion, a really great, harmonious relationship.
Yep. Totally wonderful and factual and spot on advice. Yes. Do never try to change somebody else. They are who they are. And if they're an introvert or an extrovert, just you fell in love with them for a reason. So, same in the workplace. You like these people for a reason. Don't try to make them who they're not.
Oh, exactly. And I'll just add in the workplace too. If you hired someone for a specific job, but now their personality is bothering you, but they're still right for the job, again, look at why you hired them. Why are they there? What can you learn from them? What are they teaching you? That's going to allow for personal growth within yourself way more than for them, because you're stop wanting to change who they are or how they are in the workplace.
Absolutely. That's really good advice. You have a podcast, Erin. What's the name of it?
Yes, I do have a podcast. It's called Time for You. And I talk about a lot of these things and just creating time for you in the ways that feel right to you and navigating all the parts of life, all the other roles that we have. And I share my experiences as a mom and a wife and as a business owner, and it's a lot of fun.
Cool. So go and listen to Time for You with Erin Woodruff. Erin, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you, and thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Talking with the Experts, hosted by Rose Davidson. Make sure you have a look at our back catalogue over at talkingwiththeexperts.com, and be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any episode. We look forward to your company next time. Talking with the Experts.